Travel and Things in association with Rugged Wear, Real People, Real Clothing, Real Solutions presents In Conversation With. I am your host, David Dison, and today I'm joined by author and lawyer and all-round general good guy, David Dison, to talk about his new book, The Good Nigerian. David, good morning. Welcome to you.
Thanks for that very generous introduction, David.
It's all right.
Nice to talk to an all-round good guy.
The check is in the mail.
Flattery will get me everywhere.
Firstly, I have to ask you about the cover.
Yes.
Do people still know what a dial telephone is, or have youngsters commented going, what is that thing? The gun we get, the cigarettes, the cards, all of that. But what is that orange thing on the cover?
Yeah. No, I think, the people who make book covers these days, particularly in sort of noir or crime series, have very kind of artistic bent. And I think that it's trying to get that old world detective feel,
I hear what you say.
Yeah, I don't think it's a specific reference, but it's interesting.
Okay, so let's pick it up. The book is published by Jacana.
Yes.
And it's the second of yours because your first was called Death in the New Republic. And this one was brought out, last year? 2021. Yeah. So two years ago. The blurb from your publisher, and I thought I'd start by reading it because I can't do much better than they can. A distress call from Nossel's old friend Alex breaks into the detective's lazy Sunday afternoon. He is propelled into the glamour and sleaze, I like that comparison, of the city's underworld by a kidnap and a demand for an exotic ransom. Accompanied by Alex's captivating Nigerian wife, Ngozi, they scour the flesh pots of Johannesburg from its mega-rich northern suburbs to its sordid core in the dark city. They are pursued by, and this I really like, the crazed steroidal enforcer who answers only to one man, Yuri Kamarov, the pimp meister of Dawnfontein. With time running out and their desperate quest to recover the ransom, encounters characters and places create a Chandler-esque story with Johannesburg as the main attraction. Does that sort of sum up your book?
Yeah, no, it's a very accurate summary.
All right, so we can leave the conversation there. Thank you very much for joining me, and goodbye.
It refers to Chandler-esque, and Raymond Chandler is the epitome of the kind of writer that I would like to be, because, through a detective and in this kind of film noir, book noir, fiction type area, the key character is the city. And I think that's the kind of model that I use with Nossel, because I do write other stuff. But with Nossel, it's really a mechanism to get into the city, because the detective he knows the city. So he's introduced the reader to the city, really.
Now, David, I know that you're a specialist media and defamation lawyer. So
yes.
By using the surname Nossel, how many of Joburg's Nossels have been knocking at your door going, no, you can't say that about us, or the converse? Thank you so much for using our name.
Yeah, no, all the Nossels in Joburg love it, and they say it's their alter ego.
Now,
there's some prominent lawyers and electricians and all kinds of skilled Nossels in this town.
And poor old Yuri Kamarov. Do the Russians still always play the baddies?
Listen, Russians are the new Nazis. You've got the ideal bad guys.
Yeah.
But the Yuri Komarov figure is, for me, it's a poignant figure because, he's a guy who's been abandoned Israel
Mm.
after the refuseniks have actually won their battle against Kosygin and Brezhnev, and with their allies in New York,
Mm.
basically used kind of Mau tactics on the Soviets to force the exile of the Russian Jews. And Yuri is a reluctant exile from Russia because he grew up in
Mm.
Moscow. He knows the Gulag. His uncle was in the Gulag. He's got a criminal bent. He's attracted by criminality, and he doesn't. He's not particularly happy about being dumped in Israel. So although it's a great victory against Brezhnev,
Mm.
and these 200,000 Russian families come out to Israel, it caused quite a lot of heartache.
I know that, and I want to go into the research that you did for this book because it's obviously an inordinate amount. But you did something very interesting and something I've wanted to do, but I've not had the courage because I know that it'll end up on social media and I'll look like a fool, which is trying to pull one of those carts that are dragged around Joburg by the not the refuse collector, but the recyclers. I mean, how they pull those things uphill and down dale, I have no idea. But you tried one, and you sort of collapsed in a heap after just a few paces.
Yeah, no, these guys are incredibly strong, and for me, they're a symbol through all my books, and my short stories, because I think they symbolize Joburg in a way. They symbolize
They do.
the failed migrant labor system, because the forebears of these guys were in the stopes, in the gold mines, dragging, trolleys,
Yeah.
and bigger one. And here, the 5 generations later, these guys are pulling these carts through the streets of Joburg. It's very much symbolic of Joburg as a mining town.
Mm.
But it's also, they are sort of, I put them in as kind of threshold guardians,
Yeah.
there, because they're everywhere.
They are indeed. I interact with ours and the ones that come up and down our street a couple of times. And there must be volumes of books and stories that are just waiting to be told by people who are interested.
Yeah.
But we digress slightly, which is what I do in conversation with. But take me through your writing process, because every writer writes differently. Do you storyboard? I know this is not your first Nossel book, so you already have him locked down as a character.
Yes.
But the others, do you backstory them? Do you sort of wake up in the middle of the night and go, hang on a second, if I add a child at university to so and so's background, it gives him a reason to go out and rob, type of thing.
Yeah. My wife is a writer, screenwriter, and a teacher. And she's taught me some things about screenwriting, which I've applied to my work, which is that you have to flesh out these characters before you do anything. And you can only really flesh out and what they do in the film industry, which I also am part of, I raise funds for film, is that what they do there is they actually create a character Bible, as you know. And that character Bible tells you what the guy had for breakfast in the morning, what he would have for breakfast in the morning, what he would, which bus he would catch, what transport he would use. So that, in other words, that Bible has to, you can go back to it all the time to ensure that that character is in character. And then for these books that I'm doing on Nossel, they're really about people who come from outside Joburg and look at Joburg through Nossel. So these people who come from outside Joburg, like the Good Nigerian, I had to research Nigeria flat out. Plus, I had the Russian character, so I had to research the whole exodus of the refuseniks out of the Soviet Union in '76. So, and now for my third, where I've got a Chinese film director coming in, he's referred to in the previous one, I've got to do a whole lot of research on Kowloon and Canton and Beijing, and how the indentured Chinese labor came to South Africa in So yeah, I like to do a historical reflection on the backstory of these main characters. Yeah, so
I was about to say, either you're a sucker for punishment or you enjoy doing the research. But
I love it.
You talk about the backstory, and on page 1 of the book, you talk about him taking off in his Alpha. And I thought, all right, so why aren't you being specific? What type of Alpha is it? Well, I turned over the page and I found out that it's a very specific type of Alpha. So why did you choose that 2.0 T-Spark as his car?
I once had one. So I was younger ago. So I put it in. And in the previous one, he had a Defender, big 4x4.
Right.
And I scaled him down because, the Defender, you can't really race through the streets.
No.
And Alphas, when we had Alphas, and it was the dollhouse or wherever we were at, we were dicing on Louis Bosa, so those kinds of memory.
Yeah, indeed, and I suppose maybe for the next book he'll have an electric vehicle, so he can like a stealth motor or something like that he can sneak in and out with nobody knowing.
That's actually a bloody good idea. I'll write that down. Thank you.
All right, my bank details are the following. David, do you write? I suppose, film, you'd know from your wife, film is very often not shot in a linear method. And in fact, if it is shot in a linear manner, then they rave about it. They go, oh, we had to shoot it scene for scene type of thing, and it was much more difficult. Do you write in a linear manner? Do you start at chapter 1 and work your way through? Or when it comes to editing the book, do you then go, well, hang on a second, what I thought was going to be chapter 6 could actually work as the opening type of thing?
And I do assemble it beforehand. I basically, if you wanted the film analogy again, I storyboard the whole thing out before I start actually writing it. Yeah, I don't make it up as I go along. What I do, as one starts writing these characters, all kinds of things tell you what they must do and what they mustn't do. So the biggest issue is to try and keep the authenticity and the sort of perspective, to keep it, the beauty, the ease of a sort of, these are novellas that I write, really. They're kind of not quite novels, they're novellas. The ease you can do it with a film noir or a murder or a kidnapping in the background. Obviously, Nossel's kind of interaction with these strange clients is the foreground, but so I try and make the plot actually is almost background. But the plot and the way it's worked out and the way it will go is fully sketched out beforehand.
But now I have to, I suppose, I don't want to say make a complaint or I have a beef against you. The problem with books like this, and yours is, well, this genre, and yours falls into this sort of idiom, is that I start to read faster and faster as the story picks up pace.
Yes.
So does my reading. And then I get to the end and I go, darn, I wish I'd read slower, because now I've finished the book and I'm waiting for the next one, and I don't know how long I'm going to have to wait for your next one, probably 2 years.
No, look, books of this genre are holiday books, they're airport books, they're not A novels in that sense. To write an A novel, there's a lot more work than I do on one of these novellas. There's a significant amount more work, because You know, I've just been reading Joseph Conrad under Western Eyes. I mean, but you know, it's the story of this kind of expatriate Russian community in Geneva, you know, that in 1911. And I mean, the detail, the forensic detail, the character development, it makes me feel puny, you know, because it's a particular kind of book.
Yeah.
It's not a deep thinking novel.
Do you know when the book is finished? In other words, do you get to a point where all the characters say enough and you can write the end and either send it off to your editor or send it off to, in this case, Jacana, who are your publishers, and say, I've done. I've written the end. I don't need to write anymore.
Jacana's regime is that they want your first 10,000 pages. So you have to give them 10,000 pages, which is about
pages or words, David?
Sorry, words.
I was going to say this novel is not 10,000 pages. I would
10,000 words.
Yeah.
So, which is about close to 20% of the book.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's what like now that I'm doing this third one in the series, I'm on about 5,000 words.
Okay.
So when I give them the 10,000 words, then they'll Maggie will come back to me, Maggie Davey, who's one of the most, you know, who's really just incredible. And she's kind of the life and soul of the whole.
She is Jacana
area, together with her partner Bridget. You know, the you know, then they'll come back and they'll say, sorry, you know, it's feeling this, feeling that. So then they give you an indication, and then I have to adjust the thing, and then I know that it's a go, and then I can do that. And there's also what, you know, gathering the historical materials for Joburg, because Joburg, I keep wanting to educate people about Johannesburg. What, you know, understand the city, and everybody can trash Joburg and talk about the decay and the rot and the, you know, and the grime and the crime, but also underneath that is I'm trying to give a sense of what the city's about.
Yeah.
Probably for that person who's coming to South Africa or coming to Joburg or Cape Town, you know.
Yeah. Would you move Nossel to Cape Town for a novel? Maybe he's on holiday and something happens while he's away and picks up the threads there. No, Joburg, born and bred.
You know, he could go there for a day or two. I'm contemplating that this Chinese film director goes down to the Cape Town film industry to check out the scene and look at that, because he's building the plot about he's writing the script.
Yeah.
So it's kind of meta fiction in a way. He's writing the script about his forebear, his great grandfather, who was in the Chinese indentured labor uprising in Johannesburg in 1905. So he's researching Johannesburg, you know, but I have thought of putting him for a day or two in Cape Town. But I would never be pretentious enough to do, you know, like, you know, Dion Meyer knows Cape Town. You know,
that's who I had in my head when I raised the question with you. I have been in short story collections with Dion Meyer. Okay.
I've met him and I know him. I really admire his work, and you know that. But he knows the Western Cape.
He does indeed. When I moved to Johannesburg from Port Elizabeth in the early 1970s, I lived right in the middle of Johannesburg, corner Bree and Wanderers Streets. So I know downtown Joburg so well. But obviously, it's changed over the decades, and I went back just before the pandemic. I couldn't even find the building that I'd lived in. Because the surrounds had changed so much. I drove past the block 3 times before I went, hang on a second, there's Cyril Green's shoe shop, and I lived above that. So now I know where I am, type of thing.
Yeah. So
It was a wonderful city.
So Bree and Wanderers is closer to Doornfontein. That's the heart of the Joburg mining camp, which I'm describing.
Correct.
It's part of it.
Yeah.
And Doornfontein, where Yuri is in the hotel,
Mm.
that's based on there was a hotel, I think it was owned by Sol Kersner's family. There was a hotel in Doornfontein.
There
was a kosher hotel.
Oh,
and I do think that kosher hotel, I can't get the name at the moment, but that kosher hotel, I think, had a revolving restaurant at the top. So it was quite a fancy one.
Yeah.
Because Doornfontein, obviously, from the landlords actually lived just above Doornfontein.
Correct.
In Bertha's, in Bertha's, in those Judas Park, So I'm describing that area, that whole that area all the way to Wondrous Street.
Right.
And, I'm basing that, I give reference to Charles van Onselen, and he describes Joseph Fox, who was the pimp meister of his time.
Are there characteristics of Nossel that your family members go, hang on a second, we know where this particular characteristic comes from?
Oh, yeah. Now, there's coded stuff there.
David,
and of course, the fascination with the city never ends, and I'm very much integral to this city in a whole lot of ways for myself, not in any significant manner, but just and I think all of us live in this city in this time, having to use all our resources to survive.
Yeah.
And we can do it because we come from that sort of stock.
We're tough. What can we say? We're resilient. Johannesburgers are nothing if not resilient. Look, it took me over 40 years to actually like living in Johannesburg. And now the suburb I live in is like living in the Karoo with Johannesburg attached. So I have the best of both worlds, as far as I'm concerned. The book is called The Good Nigerian. It's written by David Dison. It's published by Jacana. And I suppose we should give a shout out to Jacana because it was their 21st birthday this year. 21st birthday.
What a glorious, they're the leading independent publisher. They're not linked to any of the international. And they've just kept this consistent stream of books going and supported all these authors. It's unbelievable, really. So
if you want to find out more about Nigeria, more about Johannesburg, more about Mr. Nossel and his Alpha, then go out and buy yourself a copy. Is it available online, David? Or as an ebook? All the new channels.
Yeah, no, it's all the new channels. It's on Amazon and on Kindle.
Yeah, but I still believe that having a book in your hand is the way to go. At the end of the day, I do like, and my best is when they arrive in my postbox or the courier brings them and you do that. And the smell of a new book is so special. Takes me to all sorts of wonderful places in my youth. Once again, the book, The Good Nigerian, published by Jacana, written by David Dison. It's the second in what may be a trilogy. The first being Death in the New Republic. Does the third have a working title and a possible release date yet?
Yes, it's going to be released in September, October, and it's called The Boxer.
Because I know that you quoted Johnny Clegg here with Bullets for Bafazan. So are we, or are you now channeling Simon and Garfunkel from the 60s?
Yeah, no, it's a multi-faceted reference, but it's also, these indentured laborers came out of the Boxer Rebellion time. So he's the filmmaker is the Boxer.
Great stuff, David. It was wonderful chatting to you. I wish you all the best with this. I look forward to the next in the series, and then we'll chat again.
Thanks, David, and thanks so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. My guest today on In Conversation with David Dison The book, once again, The Good Nigerian, written by David and published by Jacana. You've been watching In Conversation With. I'm David Dison. Once again, David Dison, thanks very much for joining.